On today's show, I'm breaking down the hitters market for the Rangers, what they're looking for this offseason, what they can afford, and who they should definitely be looking at in the bargain bin. All that and more on this episode of Locked On Rangers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Rangers, your daily Texas Rangers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are locked onto the Texas Rangers. I'm Bryce Patrick, a cripplingly addicted Texas Rangers fan since 2010, the founder and host for all 4 seasons of this Locked On Rangers podcast. Today is Wednesday, November 9th, officially in the offseason, 1 day away from the Rangers having to make a decision on the contract of Martin Perez. Thank you all so much for making Locked On Rangers your first listen every single day. If you're not already, you can follow me on Twitter at Bryce Patrick. You can follow the show at Locked On Rangers and subscribe on YouTube, where the best way you can help grow the show is to comment any single thing below. Comment who you think the Rangers should be spending their money on, which bats you think I have not considered, which bats the Rangers, probably won't consider, but might be a fun little pipe dream. So I'm breaking down, like yesterday's show. If you haven't listened to yesterday's show, very in-depth, very good show going into the different tiers of pitching free agents, what the Rangers' budget might look like next year, and how many pitchers they need to buy versus how many they can afford in mixed matching in those categories. So today, I'm taking some of those leftover calculations, what the budget would have left for my ideal scenario, and how much the Rangers could spend on these different hitters. So I've broken it down into 3 different categories. Tier 1 is the pipe dream. Tier 2 is the likely suspects, people who the Rangers are probably more likely to consider and aren't as head in the clouds, complete pie in the sky type shot. And tier 3 is a buy low category, guys who didn't have the best years last year but could be a real bargain and put up some really great production for the Rangers. We're going to get into that, but there has been some news. According to John Morosi, who works for, I believe he still works for Fox, MLB Network, and also a little bit on Fox. Yesterday, he said sources indicate Rangers and Martin Perez aren't close to agreeing on a multi-year deal 2 days before the qualifying offer deadline. If both sides don't have a deal by Thursday, a qualifying offer is seen as likely. Texas needs pitching, and Martin Perez had a 2.89 ERA this year. Now, that's not great news. It's not ideal news for a team that needs, if you bring back Perez, it still needs probably 2 starting pitchers. One of those probably needs to be in the upper echelon of those free agents, the kind of top 4 that I talked about on yesterday's show. I don't think that Perez is going to decline the qualifying offer if they can't come to a deal, because in my mind, I haven't seen any real reliable numbers on what the market would be for Perez. It kind of comes down to how much do the Rangers believe this past year was the new Martin Perez. That's who he's going to be forever and beyond until he starts to age and fall off like that. Or if this was a 1-year aberration and they're hesitant to go give him a whole bunch of money if he kind of reverts into the kind of starting pitcher he was before. Now, I'm of the camp that this is the new Martin Perez. I don't know that necessarily he's going to do exactly what he did last year, just be a 5-win player with a sub-2 ERA that gets you around 200 innings every year. I don't know if that's necessarily the case, but I do think he is a new type of pitcher. I think that is more indicative of the pitcher he's going to be in the future versus who he's going to be later on. His projection next year, according to Baseball Reference, has him at only 164 innings. I don't think that's likely. I think he's going to be consistent on the innings front, which again is something the Rangers really need, because the only other, really solid top half of the rotation pitcher they have is Jon Gray, and he missed a decent chunk of time this year and is probably going to miss some time next year. That's just kind of the pitcher he has been. He's not been able to be relied on to go 200 innings. And Perez, you need several somebodies in your rotation. I think Dane Dunning did a solid job last year of going 150 innings, but you need a lot of guys to go 150 innings. There is a lot of value in that. And if they are reaching for some of these top end of the rotation pitchers like maybe a Rodon or maybe looking into a Jacob deGrom, you need someone to eat those innings if those guys do miss significant time, so that when they do come back and are healthy, the Rangers haven't completely fallen out of contention because they have to rely on a bunch of bullpen starts like they did this year. So I think it's probably going to end up with a qualifying offer deal. But if Perez goes out and does exactly what he did next year, what he did this past year, then he's probably going to make around $20 million a year for a 3-year deal, and the Rangers are going to look silly for not offering him somewhere in the 3 years, $45 million range or 4 years for $60 million range. But I think they'll definitely end up paying that price next year if he does go out and have another fantastic season. He likes it in Texas. Texas likes him here. It shouldn't be this difficult. They should have already agreed to a multi-year extension, because the entire point of not trading him at the deadline was to keep him here on a multi-year deal. Literally the entire point. But I digress. Even if they keep him here on the 1-year qualifying offer, that'll be pretty good. I think it'll be about market value, so the Rangers won't be getting, a bargain deal, and they will have less money to go after some of the top-end guys like a Rodon, specifically, who has already been mentioned as one of their interests by The Athletic. So, yeah, they should have gotten this deal done a week ago, but they didn't. I think eventually he'll end up probably staying in Texas. I don't think he's going to decline that, $19.6 million qualifying offer. But the Rangers also cannot extend him a multi-year contract if he decides to take that after the qualifying offer deadline. So that's kind of what it's going to be. Or he's going to go somewhere else and sign a multi-year deal, and the Rangers will get a compensation pick of the, I believe, first-round variety for him. But I digress. There's also some news about a different pitcher that I talked about yesterday, Jacob deGrom, who the Rangers might have some interest in. This was reported by SNY literally right after I put out yesterday's episode. It said the Mets have made preliminary contact with Jacob deGrom's camp. New York wants him back, but would be hesitant to offer 4 years if another team offered 4 years at a very high number, via Martin at Martin on ONYC. Martin O NYC. Martino NYC. There we go. We got there. Their reporter for SNY that covers the Mets. So if the Rangers were willing to go get very aggressive, I talked about a lot about what he has done. deGrom in the last episode. I think my offer was 3 years, $125 million. That would be $41.6 million average annually. They bumped that up to whatever the same average annual value. So that'd be like 4 years, $167 million. Maybe that would be enough to pry him away, which again would be very risky. And I understand the risk aversion of getting another situation like Corey Kluber. You invest all this for one guy, but granted, Corey Kluber, it was a shortened season. He probably could have come back in a normal season and been a little bit of a help. And they did have the offer for next year, which they ended up declining, but it's not the same situation because they're not trading a reliever who throws a 101-mile-an-hour cutter to go get Jacob deGrom. They'd just be spending a lot of money that is not your money. So I think that's interesting, but we're going to get into the tiers of these hitters, how much money the Rangers have left over. But first, this episode is brought to you by Simply Safe. If you've thought about securing your home with home security, but have been putting it off, you'll want to listen up. Right now, Locked On Rangers listeners can order the #1 rated Simply Safe home security system for 50% off. This is their biggest offer of the year, and you won't want to miss it. Here is why you will love it. In the holidays, property crimes and other things like burglaries spike nationally. That's why our friends over at Simply Safe Home Security are offering 50% off their award-winning security system. And there are so many great different things you will love about it. Simply Safe was named the best home security system of 2022 by U.S. News and World Report. That's a third year in a row. In an emergency, 24/7 professional monitoring agents use Fast Protect technology exclusively from Simply Safe to capture critical evidence and verify that the threat is real, so you can get a priority police response. Don't miss your chance to save big on the only security system I recommend. Get 50% off any new Simply Safe system at simplysafe.com/lockedonmlb today. This is their biggest discount of the year, so don't wait. That's simplysafe.com/lockedonmlb. There's no safe like Simply Safe. Now, let's start with the tier one, the pipe dream of all pipe dreams, the probably not going to happen, but still not entirely an impossibility. Something pretty stupid would have to happen for any of the Rangers to sign any of these guys, but it's not out of the realm of possibility. First one is obviously Aaron Judge. He's going to be 31 next year. You might have heard of him. He is a New York Yankee, or was a New York Yankee, is now a free agent. Had a pretty good season, a 111 OPS, 10.6 B WAR. He had 62 home runs. I think that broke some guy's record. I don't know who it was. It seemed mildly important at the time. He's probably also going to win an MVP. But BetOnline just came out with odds on who Aaron Judge would sign with if it's not the Yankees. We have the Giants leading at plus 200, the Dodgers at plus 300, the Mets plus 600, Cardinals at plus 800, and then in a 3-way tie for fifth place, we have the Braves, Rangers, and Red Sox at plus 1,200. That's pretty interesting. I don't think the Rangers are going to be likely to go after Judge, but if there's a long stalemate and no one's signing Judge and nothing is happening, I wouldn't be surprised if the Rangers, just threw an offer out there. I mean, they did talk about wanting to get one bat. I think they're going to get literally one bat and 3 pitchers this offseason, hopefully including Martin Perez. I don't see a whole lot of other things that the Rangers need to do, but adding one bat would be nice. I don't think it's a necessity. So if you want to spend all of that money on 3 top-rate pitchers, I think that might be the better option, because the only real position in question is left field. And like I talked about, I think on last week's episode, I think Ezekiel Duran would do a pretty good job in left field, or Bubba Thompson would be fine. Like, there's not a super duper pressing need with Aaron Zavala probably not making it up this year. Maybe a 1-year stopgap might be a good look. But if you add Aaron Judge, this offense goes from pretty good to absolutely freaking phenomenal. So that would be a whole lot of fun. The market for him is listed, these are all by Spotrac, all these market numbers listed at $37.94 million annually. My guess for a deal is somewhere in the 7 years, $280 million range. I think that might be what it is going to do to get it done. He's had some injury issues, but again, coming off the best season of his life, the best season of any Yankee in a long freaking time. So he is going to get paid, and paid handsomely. Next on this list is Trea Turner. He's going to be 30 next year. He is a shortstop / second baseman for the Dodgers. Also played for the Nationals. Won a World Series there. Had an 809 OPS this year, a 4.9 B WAR, and 21 home runs. One of the fastest players in baseball. Has literally the coolest, most effortless slide, which doesn't sound like an important thing, but honestly, the slide alone might be what is upping his market value. I mean, he's also like one of the more talented players in baseball, but like, just go watch like a YouTube compilation of Trea Turner slides, because no one has ever looked cooler sliding into a base than Trea Turner. It is honestly magical. But his market value is listed at $33.62 million. I think he likely gets a deal in the 8 years, $260 million range. I think that's about what it would take to get him. I don't think the Rangers are going to be one of those teams that is bidding for his services. I think in all likelihood he probably ends up back with the Dodgers. I mean, you'd think they're running out of amazing tier 1 shortstop prospects that are going to come up and be amazing, but maybe they're not. Maybe they're going to go spend their money on Aaron Judge instead of Trea Turner, or maybe they go get both of them because they're the freaking Dodgers and they're rich as all crap and can afford both of those insanely expensive players. Next one on this list, Xander Bogaerts. He's going to be 30 as well, coming off an 833 OPS season, 5.8 B WAR, fantastic defense, shortstop for the Boston Red Sox, also a really darn good hitter. Had 15 home runs this year. Market's value is at $31 million for him. I think somewhere in the 8 years, $250 million range is what he gets. The Red Sox are hoping not to lose him, and I think next year is when Rafael Devers is going to be up there working on a contract extension for him. But I think Xander Bogaerts' days in Boston are numbered. Maybe Trevor Story will be playing shortstop for them next year. I don't know. but I don't think the Rangers are likely in on him. I think of these guys, maybe Trea Turner. Actually, you know what? I think of the shortstops, Dansby Swanson is also in there. I'm not going to go into a whole thing on Dansby Swanson because I don't think that really any of these guys are likely. I also talked about Wilson Contreras as a potential option on a show last week, talking about the Rangers catchers. If the Rangers want to go be splashy and spend money on one of the best catchers in all of baseball, I think that'd be fun. Again, very much not a necessity. They have got a couple of catchers that are pretty darn good at present in Jonah Heim and Mitch Garver, which people forget. Mitch Garver is still a thing. He's going to be back next year. How much he plays, who knows how much we can, throw that into consideration, but I think you can slot him into quite a bit of DH days, giving the Rangers quite a deep offense whenever he is not even playing catcher. Could be a lot of fun. But those are the tier 1 guys that I don't think the Rangers are going to be in on. The next tier, the likely suspects, these are all, these are all left fielders because, again, that's pretty much the only spot that's open for debate at this point. Maybe Evan Carter makes his debut by the end of the year and pushes Leody Taveras out of center field, or maybe Leody Taveras has a great year offensively and proves, all right, I'm an everyday center fielder. My defense is going to carry, and my bat is going to be, average enough to where he can be an above average starter in center field. But I think in all likelihood, if the Rangers are going to add somebody, it's going to be in left field, and it's probably not going to be on a super long-term deal. But there is one guy who I would spend a lot of money on for a 5-year deal, and it's not the guy that you all think that I'm going to say. I'm going to get into who that is. But first, this word from our sponsors. So let's start with the likeliest of likely suspects. I've talked about this guy a lot. I think Joc Pederson would be a great fit in left field for the Rangers. Not super great defensively, but again, Leody Taveras in center, Adolis Garcia in right. You have got some defenders to make up for some of those defensive lapses. And if he needs to play DH a little bit more often, maybe get Bubba Thompson in there or Ezekiel Duran or whoever out there in left field to get him out of the field and just use more value in his bat. I think that could be very valuable. Coming off an 874 OPS season, 1.3 B WAR. I think the defense took a lot away from that, but 23 home runs with the Giants. The market value is listed at $14.69 million annually. I think that'd be pretty nice. The Rangers could sign him to a 2-year, $30 million deal. I don't see him getting a big, super long-term deal. Maybe he does. Someone wants to throw 4 years at him. I don't think that'd be the Rangers. I think he'd be a good fit for a couple years, maybe a 1-year deal, maybe a 1-and-1, but anything over 2 years, I don't think the Rangers would be in for Joc Pederson. The next one, my favorite of this category, would be at the upper echelon, was kind of just bordering between the probably not likely and likely / affordable guys, is Brandon Nimmo. He's going to be 30 next year, coming off an 800 OPS season, has a career on base. I believe it's over 380. He has been fantastic for the Mets, played a lot of center field this year, would probably slot into left field for the Rangers. But yeah, he has had a 5.1 baseball reference for a season, 16 homers, a career OPS of 827, a career on base of 385. That's exactly what I would love to see for the Rangers. Not an elite level power, but still above average and a really good offensive player overall. I think could really give some depth to this lineup, maybe end up being a leadoff hitter and pushing everybody down just one slot. I don't know what it would do exactly for the lineup, but I think he would be, wherever he slots in the lineup, would be a huge offensive addition. His market value is listed at $21.2 million average. I think somewhere in the 5 years, $105 million range would be enough to get this deal done. After yesterday's show, if the Rangers got my realistic 3 of Martin Perez and Carlos Rodon and Kyle Gibson, that gave them somewhere between $9 to $19 million to play with. So this would be at the top end of that range, but I don't think going over that is anywhere out of the question. I think it's definitely possible. I don't think it's the most likely, but still, crazier things have definitely happened. We saw what happened last offseason, and it's not like Nimmo is a $300 million contract. I think going $100 million on a hitter is probably unlikely, but if they were to do it for one, I think Brandon Nimmo would probably be the most likely option. Those other guys would be a nice pipe dream to have Trea Turner, Aaron Judge, or Xander Bogaerts in there, but I don't think those are necessarily most likely. Next guy on this list, I considered putting him in the buy low category, but he's just coming off of one bad year and has been fairly consistent for the last few years. That is the right fielder for the Seattle Mariners, Mitch Haniger. He's going to be 32 next year, coming off a 1.3 B-WAR season with 11 homers and a 736 OPS. That doesn't sound super impressive, but he did miss some time due to injuries. But other than that, he's been fairly healthy, has a career OPS over 800. He had an all-star season in 2018 where he finished 11th in MVP voting. That year he had 26 home runs. Just last year in 2021, he played 157 games with 39 homers and an 804 OPS. Did earn some MVP votes, literally I think the bottom number of votes that you can to still get votes. Finished 20th in the MVP voting, but still pretty solid year from him last year. Not a super high on base, but a lot of dingers. Decent defensively, but would add a lot of thump to this Rangers lineup, and I think that could be something of great value. The Rangers would definitely look at. He's projected to get around $15 million annually. I think somewhere in the 2 years, $30 million or 3 years, $45 million range would be enough to get a deal done. I don't know that I would go more than 2 years on him, but I think he could be a really good candidate. I'm not exactly sure if he's going to get $15 million a year, but I think he absolutely could. Next guy on this list I've gotten a lot of questions about, and I think he's a fine player. Not particularly my brand of player, not the things that I absolutely love and think the Rangers would be ideally getting for the left fielder, but definitely a guy who could provide a lot of value. That is Andrew Benintendi. He's going to be 28 next year. He's left-handed hitting outfielder who has won a Gold Glove in left field. Not a whole lot of pop. A guy who I wanted the Rangers to go and get. He was with the Royals and then eventually on the Blue Jays this year. Was an all-star because Kansas City had to have an all-star this year. Ended with a 772 OPS, only 5 home runs, 23 doubles, but had a 3.2 baseball reference WAR, hits lefty, good contact, okay on base, nothing, crazy. 350 on base for his career. This year was at 373, but did go down, on the Yankees, not the Blue Jays, who traded to the Yankees, but didn't do super well there. It's 734 OPS with them as opposed to his 785 OPS in 93 games with Kansas City. Surprised he didn't hit more home runs as a lefty in that Yankees ballpark, but he only played 33 games for the Yankees, had some injuries down the stretch, and was not able to play in the playoffs, which sunk them just a little bit in that ALCS. But his market is listed at $17.4 million annually. I don't know that he gets that. That seems like a lot. He has won a Gold Glove. He's been fine. He's fine. He's an above average player, but I think $17 million a year is not necessarily likely. But I think he's going to get a lot of years because he is still pretty young. He's going to be 28 next year. Made his debut in the big leagues at 21 and was a big league regular at 22 in 2017 with Boston. The Rangers probably should have picked him in 2014, but that's a whole other thing to discuss for another day. So I think somewhere in the 4 years, $60 million range might get a deal done. Maybe he ends up 4 years, $65 million. Maybe he gets a 5-year deal. But personally, I think he'd be pretty good. Not my particular brand of tea. I like to see a little bit more thump in a left fielder, a little bit more offense. Usually that's where you put the guy who has no position but can hit like a MFer, and that is not exactly what Benintendi's brand is, but still a really good baseball player. If the Rangers ended up signing him as their only hitter, I'd be happy. Be a pretty good player. Next guy on this list is a guy who I probably should put in the buy low category, but his market value, which I don't know what to make of it. This guy is Michael Conforto, not Miguel Conforto. Michael Conforto, former outfielder for the Mets, who did not play this year, had a shoulder surgery, and was out for the entire year. The Rangers flirted a little bit with signing him this past offseason, but Scott Boras was like, oh, no, he's going to play. He's going to be fine. Well, he did not play at all this year. Is coming off a bad season. The last season that he did play, he is going to be 30 this next year. Had a 729 OPS and 0.8 baseball reference WAR in 2021 and 14 home runs that year. But has been an all-star in the past in 2017. Had been relatively healthy for the past few seasons up until 2021. Only played 125 games that year, played 54 in the shortened season, and over 150 in 2018 and 2019. Has a career OPS of 824, a nice, sweet left-handed swing, averages 28 home runs per 162 games, and has a career on base of 356. That is more of what I think of in left field. Has played quite a bit of center field, but I think ideally is suited to be a left fielder. Could be a pretty good bargain deal. His market is listed at $20.78 million annually. I don't think that's going to be likely. And I don't think he's going to get some huge contract coming off of a season where he missed the entire season after shoulder surgery, which shoulder surgery is always really worrying on a baseball player, whether it's a hitter or a pitcher. And the last year that he did play was not exactly his best year with that 729 OPS. So if they wanted to, get risky and spend 2 years, $36 million, I think that might be a likely deal. Or maybe he gets a 1 year kind of prove it deal, 1 year in the $15 to $20 million range, I think might be more likely. But I don't think anybody is going to hand this guy some 4 or 5 year contract. Despite him being 30 this upcoming season, I don't think they're going to do that coming off of a bad year and a missed year with a shoulder surgery. But last guy in this tier 2 is Jurickson Profar. He's going to be 30 next year, coming off a season with a 723 OPS and a 3.1 baseball reference WAR and 15 home runs, hitting a lot of leadoff for the Padres who made the playoffs. He has found a defensive position after coming up as the star shortstop and having moved over to second base because Elvis Andrus was there, and then shoulder injuries, and then getting the yips, and then moving to left field. He has finally learned how to be a really great defensive left fielder. Still one of the great what-ifs in Rangers history. You see what Francisco Lindor is doing, and that's kind of what I thought of the ceiling for Jurickson Profar, and it just wasn't to be. Glad he has found a role for himself in the big leagues. He declined his player option. Market value for him is about $14.91 million. I think he's going to get somewhere in a 3-4 year deal, maybe somewhere around 4 years, $55 million would be enough to get it done. Personally, I would love to see Jurickson Profar home. I don't know if that would be the best fit, if he would want to come back to Texas after, not that the Rangers treated him badly or anything, but just like a lot of bad memories associated with, how things turned out in Texas, and he has kind of found himself in San Diego. I think he's probably likely back with the Padres, but wouldn't hurt for the Rangers to go take a look at him. Now, tier 3 is the buy low guys coming off of bad years, but who still have potential. Maybe a shorter 1 year or 2 year pillow deal for these guys could be enough to spring some value, and the Rangers to get an absolute bargain and up that offense and hopefully make a run at a playoffs. First guy in this list, you already know, it's Joey Gallo. He's going to be 30 next year, coming off a truly awful season, split between the two most hated teams in baseball, and the Yankees and the Dodgers. Was not an everyday player. I don't know how, but it's fine. It's a whole other thing for another time. In case you didn't know, he had a really bad year. 638 OPS, .2 baseball reference WAR, and 19 home runs. Market value list for him this year is $8.92 million annually. I think somewhere in the 2 years, $18 million range would be more than enough to get him. Maybe just a 1 year, $8 to $10 million deal to kind of reestablish some value. He's really not that far removed from an all-star season with the Rangers. 2021, he had 38 home runs and an 808 OPS, played Gold Glove defense, won a Gold Glove the year before, was an all-star in 2019 and 21. Would not have been in 2020 because that was an awful season. But again, we've seen what a great Joey Gallo can do. He's got some comfort. He loved Texas. The Rangers were not willing to sign him to an extension. Still wish they did. But they got an absolute haul in the trade package for him. And having him come back literally a year and a half later after trading him for that huge haul and him doing nothing for the Yankees would be just sweet revenge, especially if he came back and did really well. I would honestly love that. Might cry a lot of tears of joy if that happened, and I think it empirically makes a lot of sense outside of all of my clear bias towards my large adult son, Joseph Nicholas Gallo. Some other guys in this category are a little bit older than him. Adam Duvall's coming off a pretty bad season with the Braves, a 667 OPS, negative 0.1 baseball reference WAR, had 12 home runs. Market value for him is $7 million average annually. I think a 1 year $7 million deal would be enough to get it done. He is a guy who's played a lot of center field for the Braves, did not play as much center field this year because they had the fantastic Michael Harris patrolling center. I really don't think that he is a center fielder, but they made it work, and he's had some pretty good seasons in 2021. He had an 800 OPS in 55 games down the stretch with the Braves. He's going to be 34 next year. I think a one-year deal in left field could be a thing that makes a lot of sense. He did win a Gold Glove in 2021, which again kind of astounds me. That year he had a 772 OPS and 38 home runs. He's a guy with a lot of power. Had a couple other 30-plus home run seasons in Cincinnati. He was an All-Star in 2016, had 33 home runs that year, 31 homers in 2017, has had some injury issues and some not being good at baseball issues, but I think would be fine, decent candidate for a bounce back. Not a whole lot of money to spend on a guy who has some potential. Another guy, the only guy, last guy in this list, I should say, is A.J. Pollock. He has played center field for the Chicago White Sox and left field a little bit. Going to be 35 next year. This year was just pretty awful for him. Really not great for him with Chicago. A 681 OPS, a 0.4 baseball reference WAR, and 14 home runs for him. The market value is listed at $12.84 million. I don't know how likely that is. He is getting a little bit older, a little bit slower. I think left field is a better fit for him. He was a Gold Glove center fielder and a nice left-handed bat that could provide a decent amount of pop. I think a deal in the 2 years, $20 million range could be a pretty good option. Maybe just a 1 year, $13 million deal might be a better thought. But he's only 1 year removed from a fantastic season with the Dodgers where he had an 892 OPS. He has been fairly consistent. Maybe this was just one off year, but when guys start to get into their mid 30s, you start to think, okay, is this just a one off year or are they just kind of Dunsky? I mean, for his career, he has an OPS over 800 and an on base of 332. Been pretty solid for many, many years. That age 33 season in 2021, he had 21 home runs for the Dodgers and a 355 on base, which was his highest since his one All-Star season in Arizona back in 2015. He is getting a little bit older. This will be his 12th big league season, but I think there might be something left in the tank there. Maybe a multi-year deal isn't what you would want to do, but I think there's something still left in there if the Rangers think they can get that out of him. He also had an 881 OPS in the shortened 2020 season and has been pretty good. Hasn't had really a bad season since 2016 when he only played in 12 games. So for the most part, when he's been healthy, he's been pretty darn good. I think the Rangers could definitely get something out of him, but if they think that it's not just one bad season, it's the start of a decline, maybe you hold off on that. Duvall and Gallo are both younger, and I think pretty likely options. If the Rangers go towards the top end of the spending charts for some pitching, then maybe these buy low guys in Gallo or Duvall or maybe even Conforto, depending on what the market looks like for him, could be a better option. I think of these guys, Brandon Nimmo would probably be my ideal choice for the Rangers to sign, which would mean they could still go get some top-end pitching. I think that would make the team just really, really good in terms of their outlook for contention in 2023, which seems to be the entire goal. And I think if they're going to do it, they're going to have to get a pretty solid bat. And I think that is the only thing really missing from this Rangers offense, because again, from where they were in 2021 to this year was just leaps and bounds and miles better, which was all I was really looking for. And I think the offense is going to be even better in the second season of Corey Seager and Marcus Semien being Texas Rangers. Also, by the way, one last little bit of important news, so important that I tucked it in at the very end and I almost forgot to talk about it, but the Rangers did not pick up Cole Calhoun's option. I know you're all very shocked, and I wanted to wait until the end. Only the diehards who were ready to hear that news about Cole Calhoun's option not being picked up for next year. So thanks for the month of May, Cole Calhoun. Happy trails, and I think that is going to be it for his time in Texas. And that's going to be it for today's episode. Thank you all so much for making Locked On Rangers your first listen today. For your second listen, check out Locked On Sports Today. From the games that mattered to the most to the biggest stories in sports go behind the scoreboard and behind the scenes with local experts and insights only the Locked On can provide. Locked On Sports Today, available on this app, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcast. Thank y'all so much for listening and subscribing, and until next time, don't forget to enjoy baseball.